other parts of the state over the next 24 hours. You are now seeing local county governments issuing evacuation orders, and what we're telling people is please be listening to what your local officials on the emergency management side are directing. There's going to be a lot of places on this West Coast that's going to be very vulnerable to the effects of this storm, and that's going to be in your best interest to heed those warnings. So for Zone A and all manufactured housing in Hillsborough County, they've issued mandatory evacuation, voluntary evacuation for Zone B residents. Special needs shelters have been opened in Hillsborough, and to find those shelters and others, you can go to floridadisaster.org/shelters. floridadisaster.org/shelters. The Pinellas officials will come up and will brief you on what they're doing in a minute. There's other local authorities that have issued or will be issuing other types of evacuation notices and orders today and into tomorrow morning. And so if you're in some of those surrounding counties, listen to what they have put out. And if they haven't put anything out yet, they will likely do so later today. As you go further north up the Gulf Coast, they may do some tomorrow morning. But this is within the next 12 to 24 hours, you're going to see those notices issued at the local level. And again, as these evacuations are issued, know your zone. Know where you at, because they're not going to say the entire county goes. They're going to say certain zones or areas that are likely more vulnerable to the effects of the storm. So you can find the zone you're in by going to floridadisaster.org/plan prepare, floridadisaster.org/plan prepare. So there's no need to panic. I know we have a lot of residents who are new to the state of Florida and then maybe not experienced a hurricane before. I can tell you there's been a very impressive mobilization statewide starting last week. Of course, we declared a state of emergency. We have the National Guard, but on the local level, these are scenarios that they plan for, and they're executing their plans. So just take the proper precautions. Make sure you're executing your plan on an individual basis, but don't panic and don't do anything rash. The Florida Department of Transportation, starting at 12 o'clock today, has suspended tolls at the following facilities: Polk Parkway, Suncoast Parkway, Veterans Expressway, I-4 Connector in Hillsborough, Selman Expressway, Pinellas Byway, Sunshine Skyway Bridge, Garcon Point Bridge, Spence Parkway, Mid-Bay Bridge, and Alligator Alley in Collier and Broward counties. As more tolls need to be suspended based on the shape of the storm, we will suspend more. But clearly, this will relieve those tolls for people who are evacuating into other parts of the state of Florida. And we also have school districts that have announced closures. Hillsborough County schools are closed today. Following school districts will be closed starting Tuesday: Pasco, Pinellas, Hernando, Sarasota, Polk, Charlotte, Collier, DeSoto, Manatee, and Hardy. Lake County schools will have early dismissal Tuesday, then close Wednesday and Thursday. Hillsborough Community College, St. Pete College, State College of Florida, and USF will all be closed beginning Tuesday. Updated school closure information can be found at fldoe.org/storminfo. That's fldoe.org/storminfo. Florida National Guard has activated 5,000 Florida Guardsmen. We have 2,000 additional Guardsmen from neighboring states that are also activated to help. We have 5 urban search and rescue teams activated and are ready to help. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is activated and ready to help. Florida Highway Patrol is also standing by to respond, and they will be, when necessary, implementing 12-hour shifts and mobilizing additional state troopers to the Gulf Coast. And of course, the Coast Guard is there and will help as needed as well. So we have a state of emergency for the entire state of Florida. There may not be direct impacts in all 67 counties, but there may be indirect impacts, not just from the storm, but also from people that may be evacuating to other parts of the state. So we want to make sure that our communities have the maximum flexibility that they need to be able to respond to this storm in any way that they need to. We have been in communication with a lot of our major retailers like Walmart and Publix, and they are cognizant of the need to keep moving supplies in. I would say that most of the supplies have done fairly well. Water has gone at an incredibly brisk pace, and so they both understand that, and they're doing what they can to do more. They've already done a lot more than what they normally would do, and those are going off the shelves. So they're working on more water. Of course, as the storm hits and things get stabilized, Florida Department of Emergency Management, we're going to be delivering a lot of water to people once the storm passes, and hopefully that's not necessary and we don't get hit as hard, but we're assuming that will happen, and that'll be a big priority. And Kevin Guthrie is prepared to bring it in by helicopter into Pinellas County if that's something that is necessary for both food and for water. We're also in contact with all the major utilities throughout the state of Florida, from Duke Energy, TECO, FP&L, municipal providers, as well as rural electric co-ops. You have more than 25,000 linemen that are stationed ready to go once the all clear is given and they are given the go-ahead to go and get the power back on. I think Floridians who are in the path of this storm, whether if you're not in an evacuation zone and you're happy with your home, the sturdiness of your home, and you're hunkering down, just be prepared to lose power. I think that's something that people should expect. And depending on the severity of the storm, those power outages can be lengthy. It may not just be one day where you're out of power. So prepare for that. Understand that that's something that's a possibility. Of course, as soon as the storm passes and the all clear is given, you're going to have all of this manpower dedicated to getting the lights back on, because it's just very important for the functioning of our society. But as you see the storm come in, particularly in areas where there's a lot of trees and other things like that, you're going to see trees down. You're going to see power lines come down. You're going to have to clear roads. There's going to be a lot that goes into that. So the manpower is there. The urgency will be there as well. But just prepare yourself that a storm of this magnitude is going to take power out, more than likely if you're on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We've now received at the state level 338 requests for assistance from local counties. We fulfilled 293 others are on the way. And as Kevin mentioned earlier today, most of the requests that have not been fulfilled are ones that will be once the storm passes. It's like you don't want to just leave water in a trailer somewhere in Pinellas County as the storm's coming in. So that's being staged, ready to go. We know where the requests are, and Florida DEM will be moving those in as appropriate. We have deployed 210 medical professionals to Hillsborough County special needs shelters and another 120 to surrounding counties. We're setting up a logistical staging area in Polk County with an additional staging area later today in the area. 300 ambulance supporting special needs evacuations are now deployed in the area. Hundreds of generators and pumps have been staged in the Tampa Bay area to prepare for flooding, which we anticipate to be significant. And pre-landfall food and water, as I mentioned, has been staged for both Pinellas and for Hillsborough counties. Please continue to monitor your local weather service for updates. Finalize your storm preparations. I think with Hillsborough's done, some of the other counties you'll hear from Pinellas, they're doing this, I think, in a very intelligent way. That is, they don't want to do it willy-nilly when you don't know where the storm's going to be, but we have enough certainty that you could have major impacts in this region that they're giving you enough time to be able to evacuate if you're in those evacuation zones and to be able to make additional preparations. And so you'll hear from them in a minute. FloridaDisaster.org/get-a-plan. If you need to know what additional preparations may be necessary if you're new to Florida and you haven't experienced these, FloridaDisaster.org/get-a-plan will allow you to help make those plans for your families. And so safety is paramount. We want to make sure that everyone gets through this in a safe way. There's going to be damage, and that'll be things that we'll be able to fix. It will not necessarily be easy, but it's doable. What's not doable is to bring somebody back if they end up being in a situation that they don't survive. And so safety's paramount. We want everyone to get through this safe, secure. We'll work hard to provide the response to the damage of the storm, any individuals that may be in peril, of course, the property and the surrounding areas, and then make sure all the services are restored as soon as possible. We're going to hear from Kevin Guthrie. We'll hear from Kathy Perkins, Ashley Moody, and then the mayors of St. Pete and Clearwater. So, Kevin?
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you for having me here today. We currently have more than 338 active missions, as you heard the governor say. We are working with those local partners, and we are working diligently to ensure all needs are met. I'm sure since we've flown here, there's been more, but again, we'll continue to work tirelessly to get that done. It includes, obviously, meals, water, ambulance strike teams, oxygen, technical communications, and much, much more. We have deployed several hundred shelter support staff statewide to address staffing needs in the counties, especially in the area of our special needs hurricane shelters. We have also set up 2 logistical staging areas to provide immediate direct assistance after the storm's landfall. We will set up one of those on the west side of the storm and one of those on the east side of the storm. Residents can expect power outages. The governor mentioned that. Again, I want to say that. Residents can expect power outages due to these impacts. We do have telephone companies on standby ready to restore critical cellular service if power is lost, but in the meantime, Florida should be prepared to have a communications plan in place with their families. During previous hurricanes, cell phone towers went down, keeping individuals from being able to call or message loved ones. Residents should have alternate ways to communicate with loved ones, whether it might be walkie-talkies, whether it might be some type of messaging app, physically checking in with your neighbors, or some other type of communication that does not necessarily rely on the use of phones or Wi-Fi. Additionally, residents should ensure that their vehicle gas tanks are at least half full to ensure they have enough fuel to evacuate as soon as possible without worrying about long lines at gas stations, and to avoid gas shortages prior to impacts from Hurricane Ian. For Floridians with electric vehicles, it's recommended that battery be maintained between 50 and 80% capacity, depending on the type of vehicle and what the vehicle's manual recommends. Remember, evacuations typically do not have to be hundreds of miles away. You can escape the wind and the water by just moving tens of miles away. For more updates in your area, remember to follow your local county emergency management agency and other public safety officials on social media. You can also follow us on the division on Facebook and Twitter at FLCERT. You can also find additional information and updates about everything we talked about here today at floridadisaster.org/info. Again, I want to thank the governor so much for his leadership on this historic hurricane that's heading this way. Again, thank you, Governor.
Okay, Kathy Perkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Director Guthrie, for your state support and for also advocating for federal support for us for this event as it comes towards us. As the Governor mentioned, Pinellas County remains under hurricane watch and storm surge watch. We are expecting 7 to 10 inches of rain with isolated spots up to 15 inches of rain. With our grounds already saturated, this is going to cause widespread flooding. We do expect surge of at least up to 10 feet, some areas possibly up to 15 feet. And we have our risk map will be up on our storm.pinellascounty.org website. So residents can see what the potential surge for this storm will be in their location. As the governor mentioned, there is a slight risk of isolated tornadoes, especially in those outer bands. So we don't want people to think just because this storm shifts slightly to the left that we are going to be out of harm's way. Our entire county is going to feel some type of impact. The most likely arrival time for tropical storm force winds is 3 a.m. on Wednesday, September 28th, but this is subject to change with every advisory. So we ask all of you to stay informed. You can sign up for Alert Pinellas. You can also download our Ready Pinellas app. With Alert Pinellas, we will send information right to your phones. With Ready Pinellas, we have information on how you can prepare your homes and what to do after the storm. Once you've opened that app, it will allow you to cache that information on your phone, so if you lose internet or phone connectivity, you will still have access to that critical information. The time for everyone in this county to act is now. Effective 6 p.m. tonight, all residents in Evacuation Zone A, including our mobile home residents, will be under a mandatory evacuation order. Again, 6 p.m. tonight, Evacuation Zone A, and all of our mobile home residents will be under a mandatory evacuation order. Mandatory evacuation orders for zones B and C will be effective tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. As the governor and the director Guthrie mentioned, it's really important you know your zone. We changed some of our zones this year in Pinellas County. So make sure you go to our storm.pinellascounty.org to look up the address of your home to ensure whether or not you are inside or outside of those evacuation zones. A little while ago, we issued a mandatory evacuation for all residential health care facilities in zones A, B, and C. We have 99 residential health care facilities and hospitals within those zones. Our hospitals have already begun to start their evacuations. Everybody needs to take this seriously. If you live in zone A, B, or C, we ask that you evacuate to higher ground. As Director Guthrie mentioned, you don't have to evacuate hundreds of miles, you can evacuate tens of miles. But we know there will be some people who want to drive further somewhere in the state. If you're going to do that now. Don't wait. The traffic is going to build up, and what is normally an hour drive could take 4, 5, 10 hours to get there. We will be opening shelters tonight at 6 p.m. We will have 3 general population shelters and our special needs shelters. The general population shelters are at Ross Norton Recreation Center, Lealman Exchange, and our pet-friendly general population combined will be at Largo High School. Those will open tonight at 6 p.m. We will open additional 19 shelters, including 2 more pet-friendly shelters, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. At that time, we'll be calling for that mandatory evacuation of additional zones. If you live in zones B and C, be ready to leave your home. Take tonight to secure your home and be ready to go if you live in those evacuation zones. If you're not going to a shelter, you are welcome to evacuate tonight. We are encouraging all of our visitors to leave. We're glad you came to visit Pinellas. We want you to come back and visit us again, but we want your memories to be fond ones. All of the shelters that we have selected are outside of the surge areas, just in case there's any additional intensification. Our list of all of our shelters can be found at storm.pinellascounty.org. We are offering evacuation assistance to all of our special needs residents. If anyone still needs assistance with registering for special needs transportation, please call our County Information Center at 727-464-4333 until 10 p.m. tonight, and we'll reopen again at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Schools and county government offices will be closed here in Pinellas at least Tuesday and Wednesday. I just also want to stress, we've talked a little bit about mobile and manufactured homes. In Pinellas County, we have 265 mobile home parks, 44,000 mobile home structures. These are extremely vulnerable to winds. And even if you have a newer home that's stronger and it's tied down properly, there's going to be a lot of flying debris. We ask that all mobile home residents evacuate. We've been lowering our lakes and actively pumping our Brooker Creek area that is prone to flooding. You need to plan. We are planning for our damage assessment operations and are already working on our post-landfall needs, putting in missions to the state to help us. Again, this kind of storm is going to cause serious damages and widespread power outages. Everyone in Pinellas County will witness some degree of storm impacts, and we need you to take action now. Thank you.
Mayor, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Ashley, then the mayor. My-
Mayor?
I thought I had a promotion for a minute. Go ahead.
Well, the mayor and I are in agreement, as well as Mayor Hibbard. Before we came in today, those of us that have lived here a very long time, I'm a 5th-generation Floridian, we have often talked about this kind of storm hitting Tampa Bay and what that could do to this area we all love and our families and friends and communities and how that will affect this area. This could be the storm that we have all feared. So we advise everyone in the Tampa Bay area to please take this seriously. As someone who has already had discussions with my family and friends to pay attention to this, please understand that these evacuations are very serious. You need to take preparations now. One of the reasons we have price gouging laws in effect during times of state of emergencies, one of the reasons the governor enacts a state of emergency, is to make sure that everyone can get supplies and prepare for storms such as this, and that everyone, regardless of economic status, has access and can afford those supplies. So price gouging laws are in effect right now. That means you cannot, whether you're an organization or an individual, you cannot take advantage of an emergency situation and drastically increase prices. We need people to be able to obtain these supplies for a reasonable price. If you do that, we will take action against you, and we need the community to help advise us if they see price gouging taking place. Over the last few years, the state of Florida and my office has worked on a price gouging reporting app. So you can help us collect evidence. You can download that to any iPhone or Android device. It's called No Scam. I would advise you to do that, and you can help us respond in rapid fashion. We have teams ready to respond if, in fact, you see prices extraordinarily increased so that people cannot afford them. Lastly, I would just say, working with law enforcement around this state, I cannot tell you the harrowing stories I have heard after deadly storms where folks have been advised, encouraged, pleaded with to evacuate, and they chose not to. And as a result of that, law enforcement had to put their lives on the line to go into very dangerous situations to save them. So if you are considering whether to heed these evacuation orders, please consider the lives of your fellow community members, of your first responders that may be forced to act if you do not heed these warnings. It is not just about the safety of you and your family, it is about the safety of everyone that is preparing to protect you during and immediately after the storm. So thank you for those of you that were here today to help us get the word out to this community. The Tampa Bay community is so important to this state, and all of us who love this community dearly are doing everything in our power to prepare and protect Floridians in this area. And thank you so much, Governor, for your leadership during this time.
All right. Now, Mayor, sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Governor. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Governor DeSantis for being here with your leadership team. And as Madam AG said, this does remind me of Charlie. I don't remember feeling this way about the potential impact of a storm since then. And as you see, your state government, your local government, your county and cities are all working together. Our folks are out there handing out sandbags, securing our facilities, vehicles, and equipment. But we need the public to do your share as well. I can't stress enough, when we ask you to evacuate, you need to evacuate. Our first responders will not be able to rescue you after winds reach a certain level, and you'll have to fend for yourselves. Take this time to be prepared. Make sure that if you are sheltering in place, you have 7 days of food, water, and medications. Know your evac level. Go to storm.pinellascounty.org. You can get your evac level and other information right at that site. Your safety is our primary concern, but it is your responsibility. Please heed caution and evacuate as soon as you can. St. Petersburg City employees will be working around the clock with our regional partners and the governor's office to ensure that you have the best information as we weather this storm. Thank you all. Thank you for being here, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor, thank you for your leadership and communication. Thank you all for being here and helping us get the word out. I've been asked about many of our new residents because we've had such an enormous influx of people from the north moving to Florida. And I told somebody yesterday, complacency is our greatest enemy behind the storm. And our newest residents seem to be heeding those. But all of us who have lived here for decades, we've seen many near misses. And we need to take this storm incredibly seriously. This is a very dangerous event with the rain that we're going to have. And most of the injuries occur after the storm has passed. When trees still fall from saturated ground, fallen power lines. We can replace property. We can't replace people. So please don't be complacent, and has been said, don't put our first responders in harm's way. with silly behavior. We always see it. Don't be one of those stories. Prepare now, and we will get through this. I want to thank Duke Energy, who is here. I know they are waiting and ready to respond as soon as the storm passes. But do all that you can to keep us all safe, and God bless you.
So we're looking at a situation, and if you look at when they do these cones, they take all these different models, and then what you see at the Hurricane Center is kind of splitting the difference sometimes between all of those. And what we had seen up until today was this European model was dead set on taking this right into Tampa Bay for a direct impact, which would obviously be very, very significant. This American model had it going more in the out into the Gulf, even hitting the Panhandle. Well, what's happened since then is now that American one is saying it's going to come into Tampa. The European actually was saying it's going to be off the shore and toggling a little bit out there, and will likely have an impact in the Panhandle. The bottom line, though, is that there's just a lot of uncertainty with all of this, and I know that we have had storms where people were really ready, like with Dorian in 2019. They were projecting a direct hit on the east coast of Florida, and it turned, and that's a good thing. But these are situations where even some of the models that didn't take it into Tampa 3 days ago are now taking it in. So the prospect of having a hurricane come on shore in the Tampa Bay area is real. The prospect of, even if it's off the coast, of having really historic storm surge and flooding is very, very real. And I think the mayor made a good point about, obviously the impacts, the direct impacts are important, and you need to keep yourself safe there. But the minute that storm passes, I mean, there's going to be stuff. There's going to be power lines down. There's going to be flooding. There's going to be a whole host of things that are happening, and it's going to be a very difficult situation. And so if you're asked to evacuate, heed those warnings. You're always going to be able to get back to your house when all this is done. But if you don't heed those warnings, you could regret that. So we appreciate everything they're doing here locally, as well as our other counties throughout the Tampa Bay region, as well up and down the Gulf Coast of Florida. And we're in this, of course. This is a 24/7 thing. We're going to see it all the way through, and we'll be here on the back end. And I know all the folks in the local communities will be there as well. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, we just heard the AG say that this could be the storm that we all feared. The mayor talked about how this reminds him of Charlie, considering how troubled the property insurance market still is despite the reforms that were recently enacted. Is there a possibility that Hurricane Ian could devastate, destroy the property insurance market?
So what I would say, clearly when you look at the Tampa Bay area, one of the reasons why we feared storms is because of the sensitivity of this area and the fragility of this area, whereas you could have other areas that could take a storm like this and probably have less damage. Here, because of a variety of factors, you have that. I would also point out in terms of insurance, the water events and the flooding will likely be done under the National Flood Insurance Program, so those would probably not be homeowners' claims. Most people know this, but not everyone. Your homeowners really is the wind coverage, and the flood is the water coverage for as you see that. If you look in the Tampa Bay area, I think that we have close to 1 million flood policies. NFIP, I think there's about 10,000 or 15,000 private flood policies. So this is going to be adding liability most likely to the National Flood Insurance Program. The wind damage is obviously going to be heavily dependent on the path of this storm. If there's a direct impact of a major hurricane, you are going to see wind damage. I know we have good building codes. I know a lot of the stuff has done a lot better here in Florida than some other places, but you still have a lot of structures. Yeah, you have mobile home parks. You have things that are going to be very, very vulnerable. Yes.
It was mentioned that there is an expectation of high levels of traffic as the evacuation orders start getting rolled out. And I'm just curious, there's also been high levels of uncertainty, as you mentioned, with the models for Hurricane Ian. How has that uncertainty affected the state and local government's ability to make those calls on evacuation? And are you confident that there's going to be enough time for people to get out with all the bottlenecks in Tampa Bay?
So I think so we are seeing an increase of traffic out of Tampa Bay, probably what, about 30%?
Yes, sir.
Probably, you look at all the different roads, so about a 30% decrease from Central Florida coming into Tampa Bay, as you would expect. What the FDOT will do is, with these evacuation orders, do you know when they will go to the shoulders?
When the traffic congestion calls for it, then they'll implement emergency shoulder use.
So and this is basically, the department studied this a long time. Sometimes you say, hey, just open up the highway to only go one way. The problem is that you do need to go the other way to bring supplies and emergency and all that stuff. So what they've determined is it makes more sense to use the shoulder, so you would expand the lanes once the traffic really starts to bottleneck. I mean, just flying in here and looking, I did not see people rushing to get on the roads necessarily. I saw cars out there. You're going to obviously see more tonight, most likely, and into tomorrow. But I do think they've given enough time to be able to safely evacuate. And as was said by pretty much every speaker, evacuate does not mean you need to end up in like North Carolina. Obviously, if people have friends, they can make their decisions, but when you're in these things like Zone A, or if you're in manufactured housing that may be more difficult to withstand, getting to shelters within your own county. Hillsborough is going to open up a lot of shelters. Pinellas is opening. There'll be others. It's not going to necessarily require you to drive hundreds and hundreds of miles. That's obviously a choice individuals can make if they have a place they want to go. But prepare to have more traffic than you would normally have, just because you have a lot of people here, and these evacuations are calling for a significant number of people who live in really, really vulnerable areas. And I think you can see online some of the modeling that they have for some of the surge. And yes, the barrier islands, of course, Pinellas beaches, but if you look interior of Tampa Bay and all the areas of Hillsborough and Pinellas that are right there, that is likely to be the most significant surge. And so you've got a lot of people that live in that area, and so they're going to have to do. But the FDOT will expand. They will go to the emergency lane when that is necessary. But we've seen an increase in traffic, but not an increase that is causing everything to come to a standstill.
Have you spoken with the president yet about this?
I have not. I've spoken with Administrator Criswell. They approved our pre-landfall declaration, which we're thankful for. We also have Gracia Check out of Atlanta is down, and we've worked with Gracia for a long time. So FEMA is integrated in what we're doing. And of course, I think as many of you know, these things are operated at the local level. We're in the state are helping to manage and support. FEMA will basically be to help write checks on the back end. And so things like individual assistance, which we will most likely be applying for, they are also supporting the direct assistance right now for us. So those are things that we will be utilizing. We've already been talking with both FEMA and with Florida DEM about, if needed, to have what we call disaster recovery centers. If you have major impacts where people need individual assistance, need other support, we will stand up those centers in conjunction with FEMA. Clearly, if we have major impact here, you would have centers in this area. I would imagine that the CFO, knowing him, would want to have people there, like he has in past storms, to help with things like flood insurance and homeowners insurance. And so we're sensitive that that's going to be something that will in all likelihood be necessary, and wherever those needs are up and down this coast, Florida DEM is going to work with FEMA to make sure that folks get the relief that they need. Okay, thanks everybody.
Stay safe.
You too.
Masa mic check, 1, 2, 3. Masa mic check, 1, 2, 3. You can't hear me? Hi there, guys. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi there, Jennifer and Stacy. I apologize. We had a little bit of audio issues right there at the top. We just got an update from Governor DeSantis. As both of you were mentioning, this is a very serious storm. Regardless of the track of Hurricane Ian, there's going to be a significant impact here in the Tampa Bay area. In particular, the governor said in Hillsborough County and also in Pinellas County. We heard the AG say this could be the storm that we have all feared. You heard the mayor of St. happy, talk about how this reminds him of Charlie. So a very serious warning that we do have right now for residents here in Pinellas County. I'm told that about 44,000 people here in this county live in a mobile home. And if you are one of those folks who lives in a mobile home, you are being asked to leave now. At 6 p.m., that is going to be a mandatory evacuation order for anyone who is in Zone A or for anyone that lives in a mobile home. Tomorrow at 7 a.m., there's going to be a mandatory evacuation order for people in Zone B and in Zone C. So officials saying to take the time tonight to pack your belongings, secure your home. And the governor mentioned an evacuation order doesn't mean that you have to drive for miles and miles. There are going to be shelters open here in Pinellas County and also in Hillsborough County as well. Again, the warning is at a certain point, first responders are not going to be able to come in and help you. That is why it is so important that you listen to the warnings that these officials behind me just gave regarding the situation. Now, why? Why are they issuing these warnings? Officials said that we could expect anywhere from 7 to 10 inches of rain in this area. Isolated spots here in Pinellas County could see up to 15 inches of rain. We're told that the storm surge could be up to 15 feet in some areas. So again, officials saying it's best to leave sooner rather than later. They have waived the tolls across the state to make it easier for you to do that should you wish. And they were also saying a drive that normally takes you 1 hour could take you 10 hours. So it is best to be prepared. We know the governor has been very busy according to his schedule. He has spent the day not just giving updates at 2 press conferences, but he has been speaking with sheriffs across the Tampa Bay area, Pinellas, Pasco. He's been in touch with the heads of Duke Energy, with TECO as well. We know that 25,000 linemen are prepared because this is one thing that officials try to stress so much. There are going to be power outages, and we are all told that power outages could last for several days. We know that the governor has also been in touch with retailers today, speaking with the head of Walmart, the CEO of Publix. Right now, supplies are pretty good, but they're trying to make sure that there's enough water for this event. It could last for days again, and the governor and the Division of Emergency Management Director that say they are prepared after the storm to bring in water from the air should this area need it as well. We know that 5,000 guardsmen with Florida have been activated, an additional 2,000 from nearby states. And really the story here, Stacey and Jennifer, is the people that have been here in Pinellas County a long time, they know that this is a serious event. They know to take these warnings seriously. But we've been talking about the housing affordability crisis, so many people flocking here.
What happened?
Did you just cut me out? I just stand here.
I don't know what happened.